All right, YouTube, it's time for a winter trout fishing update for the San Bernardino Mountains. From time to time, we do updates, spring, summer, winter, and it's that time. So let's get into it. Before we do, make sure you guys get something to drink, get something to eat, and settle in. This is going to be a long video, and we got a lot to cover. So let's kick it off. We're going to talk about Big Bear Lake first, and let's get into it. All right, so for Big Bear Lake, this lake has been going through quite a struggle the last 5 years with water. We did have some recoveries. There was a time when a couple of storms came through and actually raised the lake quite a bit. But the water is the story. You would think that trout plants would be a problem for Big Bear, but it's really not. And we'll talk about that in a few minutes. But right now, with the current situation, and that's why I took a little while longer. We had a lot of people asking when I was going to release one of these videos, and people were like, "Hey, how come you haven't talked about it in a while?" Well, it's because I was waiting to see what the winter was going to look like, and if we were going to get some water and all that. Because what's the point of talking about the winter update when we really don't know if the water's going to change or not? But right now, as I make this video, there are storms blowing through the San Bernardino Mountains, dropping a decent amount of snow. And there was some rain that preceded all of that snow. So the lake is receiving water. I don't think this storm all by itself is going to rescue the lake as far as water levels, but it's definitely going to help quite a bit. It's going to bring up the water. I would say it's probably going to gain 3-4 inches of depth out of this storm. But here on the east side of the lake, very popular fishing area, Juniper Point. This lake has really come down a lot, and you could really see it on this side of the lake the most. This whole east side of the lake is very shallow already, and this popular area, Juniper Point, is just one of these places that you can really see just how far down the water has come. And right now, it's still fishable, and the bite has actually been decent, like it is most winters. It is pretty good down here in the Juniper Point area, but not quite the way it has been in the years past. This year, the winter bite down here at Juniper has been a lot more quiet, and even along the very east shoreline, along over here, this used to be like one of the best fishing spots in the whole lake in the winter months, from about December all the way through March. This was just such a great place to fish down this way, and it's still producing. Don't get me wrong; this whole east side is still producing. But with the water levels being so low, here's what's happened. They had the annual migration of fish that show up down here, and we're in this cove pretty heavy for the most part of November. You saw a good amount of fish showing up, and the bite was picking up. And then what happens is, as the water cools down, those fish need to regulate their temperatures, and when the water is really shallow, the water cools a lot faster than when it's real deep. So those fish are looking to regulate, and they move to a deeper part of the lake. So very temporarily, the bite was really good down here. And slowly but surely, being that this is the colder part of the lake, on this side, it's just always colder on the east side than it is on the west side of the lake. It's just that part of the topography. This whole east side is in like a depression over here, and cold air just settles in on this side of the lake as opposed to over here. It's much more windy and warmer on this side. So this side of the lake just cools down so much faster, and you end up with a much colder surface temp. And pretty soon, I suspect we're going to see some lake ice. Probably by the end of December, you're going to see some plates of ice out here, if not sooner. This last storm that's moving through right now at the backside of it very well might create some lake ice, depending on how windy it is. But what is going on, like I said, is these fish that were tucked in here for winter are going to be moving out of here. This little rise in the water might help keep some of these fish around a little longer, but I suspect as it cools, and it will a little more, I think in January, February, you're going to see a big old plate of ice over this, and it will be completely unfishable. Last year, I was up there, and there was about 2 weeks there where the entire lake was frozen, except for a small area by the dam. This entire lake was frozen. I haven't seen that in a long time, where the whole lake was frozen. So I think we're going to see something like that soon, at least for the east side of the lake, possibly the whole lake again if this weather pattern maintains. But the east side is just probably got another week or two. So if you're seeing this video and you're looking to get some fish, that would be a great place to start, probably for the next week. But look for the bite to definitely fall off, and these fish to move out into deeper water toward the west side. So otherwise, sure, the good thing about low water, and I even saw Big Bear Sporting Goods talking about this in an article not long ago, but one of the great things about this low water situation is you got a lot of shoreline access that we didn't have in the full water years. So it's really nice to have this access. And believe it or not, there's quite a bit of shoreline that's fishable along this south shore here. And if you're savvy with the maps and such, there are some really great spots to take your family fishing along the south side. But that's just one of the benefits. So moving on to talk about the actual trout fishing and the plants and all that. This lake really, this is going to sound crazy, but it really does not need any trout plants, at least not in any regularity, because there are so many fish, guys, in this lake. I mean, it's been getting a trout plant, every year for over 100 years. So there's an incredible amount of fish in here. And I know they released a large amount of small trout in here to help bolster the overall fish population. Now, how many of those actually survived and are thriving? It's going to be interesting to see. You'll know because you're going to start seeing a whole bunch of fish in the 6 to 10 inch range showing up on the lake, on bait rods and stuff. You're going to see all that. So if you happen to catch one of these little guys and you can let them go, definitely do that, because they're going to be there to help keep the fish populations up and all that. But this is a self-sustaining lake. These fish do breed in the lake. There is a large breeding population of trout here that spawn and breed every year. Now, Department of Fish and Game did plant this last fall. They had a couple of plants here, and there is some private stuff with the water district as well in October for the Derby. So it's getting fish. It's not that they're not planting this lake at all, but it's very far and few in between. And you know what? Like I said, it really doesn't need a lot. Now, we would love for them to do that. We would love to see more plants. More fish is always better, but it's fishing very well. I see a lot of posts on Facebook and all that all the time, people asking how it's doing. And you know what? It's never not fishing well. It's always fishing very well somewhere on the lake. And that's the key. This is one of those lakes that you really just need to get to know the lake and to stay in tune with the bite. That's part of why I opened up my Patreon side, because of that exact concept. Because if you don't have it and you want to fish, the red house down here, that's part of the problem. You come down here and everybody tunes into one spot on the lake, and it's just never the same down there. You could show up one time, you've never been to the lake and fish the red house, and you'll kill it. And you go back thinking, well, we went there one time and it was great. And you show up again, 4 months later, and the bite is absolutely dead there. But that doesn't mean that somewhere on the lake it isn't fishing much better. So if you're interested and you're new, head over to the Patreon, and we do weekly reports. I'm up here fishing it on average, 2-3 times a week And right now is a little delay because obviously it's snowing up there and it makes the roads a mess. But it is fishing well, guys, and it's not going to slow down anytime soon. So Big Bear Lake is going to be a great option going forward. We're going to talk, even though it's a private lake, we're going to talk about Green Valley Lake. And the reason why, because it's one of the major trout fisheries here in the mountains. And it's been doing good. I would say the last few years have been pretty good up here. I'll just say this, they could do better in their plants. And especially since, they charge pretty hefty amounts, and it seems like every year they're increasing the price for these fish. Early last year, I was talking to a gentleman up there who claimed to be the new lake manager, and he said that he was going to change things. And I mentioned to him that people would love to know the plant amounts and base their decisions off of driving up there on their plant numbers and stuff like that. And if they could post up, when they're getting plants and how much, and hey, all the fishermen would just greatly appreciate it. And he said that they were going to do that. And guess what? They did. For about 2 posts, they were doing just that. They started to talk about it, and then out of nowhere, they stopped. They didn't tell anybody, and you could barely drag out of them when they were going to plant some fish or not. When you were at the lake, you could ask, and they'll tell, oh yeah, last Tuesday or whatever. But anything online was not a thing. And you know what? Otherwise, I wouldn't say that's a big deal. But Green Valley Lake is far, and for a lot of people, it's not down the road. And at the time, through summer, we were looking at gas prices sitting around $5, $6, and even $7 a gallon. And for some people, that just made it a very expensive trip, to drive up there, only to find out that they haven't planted in 3 weeks, and then the lake was cleaned out of fish. So they have not changed that. They're still only, intermittently saying anything about when they're planting. So I wish that wasn't the case. I wish they were, talking about it a little bit more, but they're not. So that's where we're at. But otherwise, great time fishing there. The water quality is pretty good. The weeds weren't even that bad this year, to be honest. They had a much worse year last year with the weeds. So pretty good experience at this lake. And I do believe that it will be much similar next year. I think they may have a price increase. I am expecting a price increase for this lake, and I don't think that anything other than maybe a $2 to $3 bump is probably likely. We will skip right on over Lake Arrowhead because that is obviously a private lake and most people cannot fish it. It's too bad that they don't have that. At one time, there was a small window when they used to allow it, but not anymore. So moving on to Lake Gregory. Now, Lake Gregory has just had an absolutely phenomenal, last 2 years. It's just been incredible up here. And they were on a roll until this last year late and this year. What do I mean by that? Well, last year and the year before that, so 3 winters ago, is when this company really took off. The Lake Gregory company took off as the new concessionaire here at the lake, and they were planting all the way through winter. They had plants scheduled, and last year they stopped. They planted through, I think it was the first week of November, I think they planted, and then they had no plants in December and February, through December, January, February. And I think they started in late February, they planted again. And they're doing the same thing this year. There have been no plants since the early part of November. And right in tune with that. The fishing had died off quite a bit. And that's a shame because this lake was really on a roll as far as the quality of fishing. And it just took a dive after that. The fishing has fallen off. Now, is the fishing bad up there? No, it is not terrible, but it was on pace to be probably one of the best trout lakes in the whole state, if not one of the best in the West. I mean, out fishing everything in the Sierra. I mean, this lake was just really killing it, and there was so many nice sized fish coming out of here. Everybody was doing like a limit, no problem. It was just an awesome experience, and at $10 to fish it wasn't really a bad price either. And but that's changed, so it's a little slower out there. And even now, being that it's been months after the last plant, there are still fish showing up. Every time I go there, I'm still catching fish, and it's still fishing quite well. Although you could tell it needs another plant, that's for sure. But with the focus on the county lakes down in the valley and all those other lakes taking off, the pressure has been taken off of Lake Gregory as well. So that has obviously helped keep some of the fish that are left here in the lake. So if you do make the trip, you can expect the possibility of still catching some really nice fish and potentially limiting out. Last time I was there, I had no trouble getting a limit at all. And that's going to continue. My only beef with the conditions at this lake is they have been cutting trees down around the lake purposely so they land in the water. And they say that this is to help the habitat. And man, that made me mad, because what they did was ruin a bunch of fishing spots. Right here in this lake spot right here, you can see this is one of them right here, where they cut this tree down and it landed. This is a very recent shot. This satellite shot's not even a year old, because this used to be a standing tree and they cut it down. Now, typically in the past, they would cut the tree down and cut it up and then haul it off. But now they're cutting them down so they land in the lake. And what they did is they ruined fishing spots. They did it over here as well. There's a log in the water, and that's all they're doing is they're basically ruining spots where you had a nice shoreline, and now there's a log in the water, like a whole tree, and you can't cast there because of all the crap in the water. So they did it over here along this shoreline as well. There's a bunch of trees in the water now, and they say that it was to support their new bluegill and catfish fishery. So I don't know. Whoever's idea it was to cut the trees down, I don't get it, because this lake has had these fish in the past and they didn't need those trees in the water to support it. So whatever reason, that's something they did. And for me, I don't like when they purposely ruin fishing spots for any reason. Moving on to the North Shore up here, though, this spot was kind of ruined by nature. They had a flash flood move into the lake and poured in the lake. Now, it was good for the water level because we had a major bump in water. This lake has been full it's just been getting really lucky with water. This lake has no natural water sources other than runoff. And so it's just been great to have all the water. But that flash flood did blow a bunch of debris into the lake on the North Shore right here. And a lot of that, unfortunately, is still there, and the lake concessionaire hasn't cleaned it up at all. So it's still pretty bad. And for the most part, this section of shoreline has been unfishable. So hopefully some of that will just kind of deteriorate and go away to make this spot fishable again, because this was one of the great little spots to bring your family and stuff and hang out. But they have basically transformed this whole area over here. Now, the old baseball diamond, this was right before they just demolished it, because this is no more. They got rid of the baseball diamond. This is a giant field of just like a big old grass field now, like with a running track. and they've turned this bathroom into a partial, like a little tackle shop, and now they're renting kayaks out of here, and it's kind of a nice little setup. All of this is gone. They dredged all this sand out, and that is absolutely awesome that they did that. You could tell the silt is slowly building in, especially these storms is going to start blowing sand in here. So this is going to fill back up with dirt and sand for sure. It's going to be just like you see it. It'll happen again. But for now, it's a good fishery over here. It's a great spot to post up. And it is, I think it's like, is it $8? I think it's $8 to park over here, and then $10 to fish. So you're looking at around $20 basically to park and fish if you don't park on the street. So, but Lake Gregory still fishing great. Just a couple of snags there with the logs in the lake, but other than that, they're doing a great job. And I think they're going to plant again real soon. I bet you they'll probably put some in late January or February. And that'll be awesome when they do, because they've been putting some really nice fish in there. So let's move on to Silverwood Lake. All right. Take a little drink of the coffee. Silverwood Lake. Man, what is going on up here with Department of Fish and Game, man? They have been planting an absolutely massive amount of trout. I mean, they planted twice in 1 week over 4,000 pounds of trout or something like that in a week over here at Cleghorn Beach. And the crowds that have been showing up here have been enormous. I mean, there's huge lines of cars to get in here. And part of that is because it's only $10 to get into this lake by the car. So if you go to, Ukaipa, or you go to all these other places, you got to pay for the car, and you have to pay per fisherman to fish. So this lake, you only need to pay to get in to park, and everybody in the car is fishing for free, but you do need a license, but you don't have to pay to fish basically. So obviously massive crowds, and there've been absolute huge crowds. Like every time they plant, it's just been crazy. The only unfortunate thing is the water is down quite a bit, and I don't know what their plan is. They really don't talk about what they're doing with the water levels here, but this lake will pump out water and pump in water and fluctuate in depths all the time. I mean, they can, my understanding is the pumps here can drain and refill the lake every 3 days. That's how powerful the pumps are in this lake. And they can really drop the lake level out of nowhere. So right now, water level is real low. And what's happening is, because it's real shallow, it's forcing a lot of people that are out here wearing waders. And wading fishing and bait fishing from shore are not a good mix. And we're seeing some arguments and some things happening over here because of that. Because people wearing waders will walk out right next to a guy who's bait fishing, and his bait is sitting right here, and you got somebody standing right here splashing around in the water, walking around. And then some people are new at wading, and they're walking back and forth in and out of the water, just, and it's driving people crazy. So I don't know how long that'll last as far as the water being down, but at least for the time being, it is down, and that is affecting the trout. So the one thing about trout here being planted is the striper. The striper will probably, for the most part, keep the trout close to shore. So you really don't need waders to get at these trout. You can cast from, dry dirt and get into them just fine. So it's just the nature of this lake. The striper bite has been pretty good. So if you come to the lake and you're on a fish for trout, don't be so stuck on trout, because you could get into a really good striper bite right now as well. So if you got a flow tube, I recommend flow tubing out here right now. It's really good. and it's a great way to beat the crowd. So even if you show up late and you see the parking lot is just slammed with cars, don't worry about that. If you got a flow tube, you just walk up and launch, and you get away from the crowds, and you'll have plenty of fish to catch. If you notice, there hasn't been much talk about other places on the lake to get trout, but we are talking about that very thing over there on Patreon. In fact, this last week, I mentioned some great shorelines where trout are showing up in some other spots on the lake. So if you're looking to get away from the crowds, head on over there, click that link below, and we'll lead you to some good reports and some directions so you can change it up a little bit. But Silverwood Lake, man, fishing great, lots of trout plants, good striper bite, probably one of the best fisheries in Southern California, if not the best fishery in Southern California. Now, nothing big showing up here trout-wise. I mean, there are a lot of small fish, but hey, it's fishing good, and sometimes that's all you need is just a good bite no matter what. We're going to include Hesperia Lake because it's so close to the mountains, even though it's basically high desert. But Hesperia Lake has been putting on a show as far as the size of fish. They're blowing away a lot of the other lakes, and good for them. They are charging $25 to fish here, I think now. I think I remember a time when it was like $10 to fish here, and even that seemed expensive back then. But the result, as you saw in my last video, is low crowds and pretty good fishing overall, honestly. It's been great. The water quality is about the same as it always is. It's kind of nasty up there in that lake, but the bird population is still really high. You're seeing a lot of the birds just eating every single fish, and it's just the way it is. But otherwise, the lake is fishing well. There's some real nice tanks being caught out of here almost every day. The majority of the time it was a jig bite, but really the last, I don't know why, but the last couple weeks especially, it's been turning into a bait bite there. And they've been really liking that corn yellow, salmon peach, flavor between those two has kind of been the best. I had good luck up there with some orange mice tails sprayed with garlic, but overall, it's still fishing pretty well. Just make sure you guys keep your bait low in the water column. There are no trout up on the surface of this lake, and they're all down there on the bottom. And that's why typically jigs do so well, but right now, not so much. And that's because I think because of the water is just something about it that they're preferring to go after that bait. So for now, stick with maybe bait and throw out a jig every now and then and kind of mix it up and see what you guys can do. Moving across the mountain range over here to Seven Oaks, we're going to talk a little bit about some of the Santa Ana River drainage and maybe even Jenks Lake. But Santa Ana River is one of these places that does get trout plants. They skipped a year because the water was just so low that they had no pools at all to plant. And but they resumed this last summer. They were actually planting quite a bit. There was a stretch there where they were planting every week for multiple months, and the pressure was really low. But there's a long stretch of river that you can fish, and they do plant the majority of that. And a lot of people don't think they do, but they really do. I've actually witnessed them driving into some of these more remote areas and dumping fish in there. So if you're looking to get away, definitely give that a look, because it's one of these places that just not a lot of people fish it, and it's fishing pretty well. So a lot of people are looking to fish some of these upper areas for wild fish, like the upper Santa Ana River. And there are some fish in there, but man, they are so small. And I'm talking like really small fish, like 3-4 inch fish that there's not much to fish for. And this whole backcountry and some of these other creeks back here actually have some fish like that. So it is an option. If you want to head over to Jenks Lake this next summer, you can, excuse me, let me drink a little bit of coffee here. If you want to head over to Jenks Lake this next summer, I'm hoping that you'll see some actual fishing going on, because what happened, there was some drama with the water source here called the flume. And it's not Frog Creek really, but what happened is there's a flume that was dug to transport water from an upper creek a long time ago in the 1800s. And over the years, some of it was natural deterioration of that flume to carry water, and some of it was intentional. There was word that some people were ruining the flume to divert water into the main creek, which would then carry down to the Santa Ana River. And they were blaming fly fishermen for that, like a group of fly fishermen for that. So I don't know if any of that's true or not. I tend to not believe that. I think, did somebody ruin it? Maybe. But nevertheless, the lake has struggled with water. It was almost dried up entirely. You could actually see a metal detecting video of mine, metal detecting the bottom of this lake. And it was down to like the last maybe 8 to 10 feet of water. It was really bad. But hey, there's snow, rain. The flume's probably functioning because people have been working on it. And I think we're going to see some trout plants here this next spring and summer. I really do. I think the fishery is going to return, and hopefully they will do some heavy planting there to make it exciting again. It used to be a great alternative to some of the more crowded places. But man, over the years, it's just taken a dive. Without water, it's kind of hard to plant fish. You know what I mean? So moving south, we're going to go across the range, and we're going to talk about the other part of the San Bernardino Range. Now, this is actually considered San Bernardino National Forest, so we are going to include it. Every year somebody chimes in and says, hey, that's not part of the San Bernardino Mountains, but it is part of San Bernardino National Forest. So we will talk about this area here on the south side at Lake Hemet. So what's going on at Lake Hemet? Same issue as Big Bear. This lake is very similar to, it's like a miniature Big Bear Lake, if you will. And the reason why is because the same people built the dam that built the Big Bear Dam. It's the same people, and this lake's been around for over 100 years and has a lot of history. But as you can see, it's quite shallow on the east side of the lake, and this is where they plant the fish right here on this finger. And guess what? They haven't planted yet this year. The last plant went in last fall, and they were supposed to plant, I think it was October 30th, right around Halloween. They were expecting a plant, and they announced that they had a water quality issue and couldn't plant. So I've been bugging them and asking them, and I guess they've, I don't know why since then they haven't planted, because I'm sure the water quality is just fine, but they have no plants scheduled until the middle of January. So they're talking about 4 plants going in sometime between January and April. And I'm sure they'll put in some decent amount of fish, because when they plant here, they tend to put in a large poundage, and some of those fish tend to be pretty nice too. So are there holdovers in this lake? Absolutely. You can head up there right now and you'll have a good shot at a trout in this lake. There's, even when they weren't planting trout for so many years there were still trout showing up, and there's a good amount of fish in here, and they do reproduce. And it's just like Big Bear, guys. Very similar. It has a very well-sustained trout fishery. Now, down here at the dam, it's actually much deeper here than it is at Big Bear. This dam runs well over 100 feet deep, And so year round, they're able to sustain trout here, and it's a great fishery. So we'll look forward to those plants in January. I might pop my head in there before that, just take the family up there and do a little poking around and stuff. But a pretty good little lake. Now, if you didn't know, there's a private side where you got to pay, and then there's a public side of this lake to shore fish it. So here's the dividing line right here, this gate, and you can see it runs all the way up to the road here. Now, if you want to fish the public side, you got to pull in off the road. A lot of people don't even know there's a public side of this lake. You can pull in off the road right here and take Lake Hemet Road all the way down until it dead ends. There are 3 parking lots that you can park, 1, 2, and 3, and you can park there. You just need a forest adventure pass. So it does cost a few dollars. I know that's the feds coming in there trying to get their money, and they can charge because it has bathrooms, and otherwise they wouldn't even be able to charge. I've never seen them check anybody, but doesn't mean they don't. And that's that. But if you want to fish the private side, we'll have to update what their prices are going to be. Right now, it's pretty pricey, guys. I think it's $20 right now to get into this side. Now, what you're actually doing is paying just an entry fee. They claim they do not charge to fish, but it's like $20 to basically use the lake. It's like a day use fee. So $20 to visit. And you can see why Silverwood's pretty attractive at $10 for a carload of people versus, a few more dollars. But if you're in the area, obviously this is a lot closer than Silverwood Lake. But if you're not in the area, you can see, it's way out in the sticks, guys. Even people that live in Hemet, you can live in Hemet and it's still a 25-minute drive to get to Lake Hemet. So not exactly a 5-minute drive for anybody. So moving along to Lake Fulmer, this is just down the road from Lake Hemet and had a great little fall. I don't know if you guys knew, but most of the summer and fall, they were planting trout here. They weren't dumping in like large amounts by any means. It's not like they were putting in 1,000 pounds, but they were planting this little lake quite often. And I'm sure there's still fish in there, but the only problem with this winter, this will ice over. And be careful. Don't walk out there on it. There's people that do it every year and fall through the ice. But yeah, there's not going to be any fishing here. But maybe in the late winter, this winter, when the things begin to thaw out, you'll have an option of fishing here with some of the fish that are left in there. I'm sure there's some fish left in there from last planting. So, but that's just about covers it, guys. That's it. So hopefully you guys enjoy these updates. That's for the winter San Bernardino Mountain update. We got another one coming for the Park Lake system, and we're going to do an Eastern Sierra update for winter. And well, of course, we're going to be doing the spring updates and all that in a few months. But for now, that's it, guys. So hopefully you guys enjoy these. I like making them and keeping you guys informed of what's going on. If you have any questions that we didn't talk about in this video, just post up in the comments section below, and post up what lakes you're excited to try fishing this winter. And I'd love to hear about those. All right, I'm out of here, guys. And don't forget to subscribe. Head over to Patreon if you guys want some more updates. And we'll see you guys on the water. Bye for now.